Having climbed the corporate career ladder, by his later 40s, Jason Smith was very comfortable in life. Maybe a little too comfortable. A sedentary lifestyle and evenings filled with wine and easy meals left him feeling exhausted, depressed, and with a dangerous mix of high blood pressure and high cholesterol.
I was going down a road which ultimately would lead to quite a deterioration in my health and my fitness.
At 50, he decided it was time to change. 5 years later, the results of his lifestyle transformation were plain to see when he was the cover star of Men's Fitness magazine, thanks to a body that would be the envy of men half his age. Now a professional fitness coach, he joins me today to share his inspiring story and why he believes the key to transforming our bodies is to work smarter, not harder. And here's how we do it. Jason, thank you very much for joining me. You are a vision of good health and fitness sitting there right now, and it's really hard to imagine you otherwise. I wonder if you could start by taking us back to what life was like for you in your 30s, 40s. What were you doing? What did your lifestyle look like?
So yeah, I think the vision of health is helped by this sunshine this morning. But if I go back in time, my 30s and 40s were very much driven by firstly work, so my career. That was a big focus for me. Had a lot of responsibility and wanted to rise up the corporate ladder. I was commuting quite long distances as well, so I had an hour or an hour and a half commute each day. I socialized. I was married to a different wife to the one I'm married to now, but mainly as a result of my career focus.
Right.
And I was happy. I have to say I was happy, but I was not healthy. I was going down a road which ultimately would lead to quite a deterioration in my health and and my fitness.
And so was that mainly what you were eating? Were you drinking quite a lot of alcohol? Was it a mix of things really at that point?
So what I was eating was not terrible, but it was certainly convenient. So there was a lot of, I suppose, processed, ready-made type of meals. I was eating baguettes and the like for lunch when I was at work. There was a fair amount of eating out, and I didn't really pay much attention to anything other than, oh, that looks like it's going to taste nice. And in terms of alcohol, at that point, yeah, I was drinking, maybe a glass or two of wine with an evening meal, but that was pretty much it. Mm-hmm. Unless I was out socializing, and if I was socializing or maybe on holiday or something like that, then I would drink more. I guess with every year that passed, my habits worsened and my health and fitness deteriorated as a result. Not in a way that I really felt it or even saw it, but it's almost like that frog in the boiling pot analogy. You don't realize until it really does start to affect you, and you start to feel the heat of some of the consequences of the decisions you've made previously and the compound effect they have had on you. So the nearer I got to 50, going through my late 40s, the worse and worse I felt, mentally and physically.
How were you feeling? What were some of the symptoms that you were experiencing?
Lethargy. I just had no energy. And with that, an element of depression. I didn't feel like I wanted to do much, and I didn't feel like I was capable of doing much. But my son was born when I was 39. And as he grew older and more active, and me as a father wanting to interact and play with him and all of those kind of things, that's when I really noticed the change in my fitness. Because in my early 20s, I was reasonably fit. And in my mind, I still had all of that, and I still had all of those capabilities. And it wasn't until I was kicking a football around in the garden with my son that I suddenly realized how exhausted I was getting. But even then, that didn't really make me want to change anything at that point, up until a part where I thought I should go and see a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And she undertook various tests on me, blood tests, scans, and the like. And it turned out that I had hypertension, I had high cholesterol, I had onset fatty liver and onset type 2 diabetes. So
Wow.
that feeling of tiredness, that lack of motivation I had, it was not a surprise once I knew that my body had significantly changed and my health had therefore deteriorated. Even that wasn't enough to make me change. Not immediately, at least. It did contribute, I suppose. But during my late 40s, my habits worsened. So, the food that I was eating at night, I would describe as something and chips, basically, oven chips.
Or fries for our friends elsewhere.
Yes. The amounts of alcohol I was drinking had increased. I'd stopped putting the cork in the top of the wine bottle or putting the cap back on, and I was finishing a bottle. Then, over time, that led to me opening a second bottle, and I was drinking, too much. It's strange though, because I kind of felt like, my life's as good as it gets, a little bit like the Jack Nicholson film. And my son had gone to bed, was sitting watching something on TV, and it was kind of my therapy, if you like. That's how I was using it. It resulted in me, not really recognizing the person that I'd become. And I got angry. I got really angry with myself for letting myself get into this position, because I recognized that it wasn't like I'd caught some kind of virus or disease. It was all self-inflicted. It was all as a result of the lifestyle changes that I'd made, and maybe a lack of focus on my lifestyle and the impacts that it was having. I would be cleaning my teeth in the bathroom in the morning, and I would just look in the mirror and say to myself, what the hell are you doing to yourself? And get really, really frustrated. And for a period of time, the habits I had built just kept repeating. But eventually, something happened, and I decided, right, this is it. It's time to change. And I committed one Monday morning. In fact, we're coming up to the anniversary of it. It was the 21st of January in 2019. I committed to making some very significant changes, and that's where everything just changed.
Just to take you back slightly before that, when you were sitting on the sofa every night, I mean, were you kind of getting up most mornings, I'm assuming feeling tired and rubbish, and thinking, I won't open that wine tonight. I'll try and have a day off it, and then just getting back and feeling so exhausted and so like, I need a change of momentum here. I've had a hard day. I really deserve that. It just kept happening. The cycle kept happening over and over.
It did. And I was able to break the cycle. So I would say that in the morning, and I could follow through. And I, on occasions, went weeks, even months without drinking alcohol. Without the other things that I started doing once I committed to really changing my health and fitness, that had a limited effect. And eventually, I wasn't really feeling any better. And so I thought, well, a glass of wine won't hurt. And of course, as soon as you have one glass, you pour a second, and the old habits quickly returned. At this point, I was working in a consulting environment, doing very well in a consulting environment. And to all intents and purposes, the people that I worked with, the people that I dealt with, they never knew the problems that I had on the inside. And from the outside, I didn't look like I was massively overweight. I didn't look like, I didn't have blotches on my face from the amount of alcohol that I was drinking. I looked pretty normal. I looked pretty much like any other, late 40s guy.
It's that kind of cuddly dad look, isn't it? That kind of comfortable with your life.
Yes.
Eating well, as people might
Exactly.
say. Enjoying a glass of wine. The things that become very normalized in middle age.
Because of that, the need to change wasn't really that high. It was it was only when I got so frustrated with myself and I saw a better vision of the future, if you like, that I decided that I should change.
Well, that is key. I was just going to ask that because obviously you had some sense that things could be improved. You weren't hopeless. You thought there is another way for me,
Yes.
which is fundamental to being able to make the change. So the Sunday night, you went to bed and you thought tomorrow everything's going to be different. I mean, what happened in that day on the Sunday where you thought, right, I'm going to make a big change, and how did you decide what that change would look like?
Well, it sounds ridiculous, but I was flicking through Instagram and there was a guy called Dave who I didn't know in real life, but we were friends with each other on Instagram. And he had decided that he was going to go sober as a New Year's resolution. And on the 21st, 3 weeks anniversary, he posted a picture of a still of the film The Hobbit with a photograph of Bilbo Baggins, big, huge grin on his face, running through the Shire, the meadows. And the words underneath it were, "I'm going on an adventure." And it stopped me in my tracks because, and Dave had posted this because, he was feeling good as a result of not drinking for 3 weeks, and he had decided that he was going to get his cycle out and go on a cycling adventure. But the photograph itself just, even though it's a small brown furry creature with big feet, so nothing,
Not a high relatability factor.
nothing that you might aspire to be. But it was just that feeling. It was, I want that feeling. I want that feeling of joy, of energy, of motivation, of capability. And that really is what instigated the change. And so the next day I did say, that's it. I'm not going to drink. I never said I'm never going to drink again. I said I'm not going to drink today, and basically just kept repeating that mantra day in, day out. And coming up to 7 years later now, I still do.
Fantastic.
I went onto Dave's profile page and just looked at his recent posts and the things that he'd done and experienced since he'd decided to give up alcohol. And I saw that he'd been reading a book called The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober. The title struck me. And because I'd never associated sobriety with joy. And so I ordered the book online, and I started reading it online that day and finished it within 24 hours. And I thought, well, yeah, maybe a big part of the reason why I've been feeling the way that I've been feeling is that I am drinking too much alcohol. But I did also say to myself, okay, alcohol is one part, but I need to start moving and I need to start eating better. So I changed my diet. I literally went to the supermarket and replaced all of the stuff that was in the fridge with fresh foods, fresh meats, fresh fish, fresh vegetables and salads, and really embraced a healthy eating regime, which was a lot easier than I thought it would be, actually. I really enjoyed the meals that I was having. And on the exercise side, I thought, well, let's start simple. I'll go for a run. It didn't last very long as a run, but I did keep going as a walk. And I was out for maybe 45, 50 minutes. And when I got home, I just felt really good. I felt really good because I'd been out in the countryside, in the sunshine. And I guess most importantly, I felt like I'd done something for myself for the first time in a long time. And I suppose that was a feeling that I wanted to repeat. And that really helped with building up a fitness regime.
So that made the next day easier.
Yeah.
Because you could remember the day before where you felt better about yourself and about life.
Exactly. And I got back and I thought, I'm going to do this again tomorrow. And the weather was very similar. In fact, it was very similar all that week. Each time I went out, I was able to run a little bit further and walk a little less. And the most important part there was that I was thoroughly enjoying it, as were my dogs, because they were getting out more often than they ever had done in the past.
We like this new you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Excellent. And so you started with running, and now clearly from the pictures on the cover of Men's Fitness magazine,
Mm,
you're doing more than running these days. Tell us how
yeah.
you began to really, reshape yourself.
I remembered that, during my late teens, early 20s, I really enjoyed strength training.
Mm,
And I understood that we do lose our strength with age, and that
mm,
it would be a good idea to incorporate strength training in my regime. So I joined a local gym and started attending that. To start off with, just trying to do the kind of things I used to do when I was, and that I could remember from my early 20s.
mm.
Obviously, things had changed a lot by that point. The weights felt a lot heavier. My heart rate was getting high a lot quicker, and I had to temper things. And I put a workout routine together for myself, and I followed that on a regular basis. Not every day, because I needed to I needed to rest, and I also wanted to continue the running and walking.
Mm.
So I love that feeling well, you start off feeling sore the next day, but after a week or two,
Yeah.
that soreness just turns into a kind of buzz. And I love that feeling. It felt like my body was alive. Whereas prior to making any of these changes, my body felt far from alive. It felt like,
Yeah.
I was dragging it around everywhere. The combination of the better nutrition, the giving up the alcohol, the exercise I was getting with my running, and the exercise that I was getting with the strength training in the gym really started to take hold and make a big difference to me physically. And as
Mm-hmm.
that happened, it only improved my mental health. So I didn't mention it earlier, but I was on antidepressants
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
before Bilbo Baggins appeared on my screen.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I just felt so much better about myself and life itself. I did have a test as well, because around about 10 days in, my wife has a twin sister, and they had both just turned 50. And to celebrate, they decided to go off to Thailand for 10 days. And so any form of kind of accountability that I had
Mm.
suddenly disappeared. And I remember thinking, this is going to be a test, because it'd be very easy to stop at a service station and pick up a bottle of wine from a journey that I've done, and to get some food like I used to eat. But I stuck with it, and
Yeah.
and I think that was just so self-affirming,
Mm.
because I'd proved that I was doing it for myself primarily. I wasn't really doing it for anybody else, even though everybody else did benefit, particularly my family. I didn't need somebody else to hold me accountable. I can hold
Yeah.
myself accountable, and I can be disciplined in following through and delivering.
Well, you often hear from wiser people than me, but it's always something that's stuck with me, is that you build a reputation with yourself, a good reputation with
Mm,
yourself, when you keep your promises to yourself.
yes.
And that a lot of the despair that sets in and frustration with ourselves and then talking ourselves down can come when we make these promises to ourselves and then don't keep them.
Yes.
Um, Contrasting what life was like before, where you were maybe coming in, opening that bottle of wine, having a very sedentary evening in front of the TV, sort of comfort eating, drinking the wine, feeling exhausted, or what did those evenings start to look like in comparison?
Firstly, I was a lot more active with my son. So when I had finished work, he was home from school. I would be spending a lot of time with him. Being present is probably the best way of describing it. I had more mental clarity, and was able to focus my mind more on him, rather than thinking about, what am I going to have to eat? When can I have a glass of wine? Those
Mm.
kind of things, or things that were happening with my job and my work. The second one was I had this thirst for education. So rather than sitting and watching TV, I would be doing a lot of reading. I would be researching things online, and also thinking about the kind of things that I would like to do. Because if you go back to that original motivation, I'm going on an adventure. I wanted to try new things and see, what I enjoyed. So I learned to swim properly. That was one of the key things that I decided that I would do, and I decided that I would take up and have tennis lessons as well. So my evenings suddenly went from being kind of mindless entertainment to mindful thinking, learning, and planning. And that was a key difference that everybody in the house, even my son, who would have only been at 9, turning 10 at the time, was very evident to him.
Yeah, I mean, at what stage did friends and people around you start to say, "Gosh, you're really changing here"?
Yeah, about a couple of months. So at some point during the February, towards the end of February and early March, people asked me what I was doing, because they could see in my face, for example, that I was losing weight. Obviously, that time of year, we're all very wrapped up in clothes. And then, some people actually were concerned that I might be getting ill, because the amount of weight loss that I'd had over a short period of time was significant. When those kind of comments persisted, that was when I decided I would change things around a little bit. I would eat more, and I would adjust how I worked out to stop focusing on weight loss and really, I suppose, building strength more, prioritizing that. Kind of once I balanced out, people were two things. They were very complimentary about the changes that I made, but they also questioned why I felt or thought the need to make those changes. And I was honest. I told them that, well, I wasn't actually doing very well. I'd got hypertension, I'd got high cholesterol, and I wanted to make some changes, mostly for the sake of James, which my son. There was one time I was watching the school rugby match, and I was with another dad who is in the medical profession, and one of the boys playing got injured, and this dad had a dog with him with a lead that acts as a belt around your waist, and he went off to tend to the boy who had been injured and handed me the dog, and I thought, okay, I'll put it around my waist. And I was talking to somebody else, and they started laughing and looked at the floor, because this belt had just fallen on the floor. And there were little things like that just really kind of surprised me. But little things like that just I suppose confirmed to me that I was making some really positive changes.
And I mean, you mentioned antidepressants there. Were you put on other medications when you had those original diagnoses? And at what point were you taken off them?
Yes, I was on statins, and I was on blood pressure tablets as well. I can't
Did you
remember.
get any side effects from them, from the statins or?
No, not really.
Yeah.
No, no. But I had a check-in with my GP in the April, and I'd also bought myself a blood pressure monitor, and I was measuring my blood pressure daily and just noting it in a little notebook, and showed her what had happened. She was quite amazed by the visual difference in me. She was, when I showed her the numbers, she was amazed at that. She did the blood test. She sent me off for another scan, and I saw her again about a week later with all of the results, and she was amazed. She took me off all three of the drugs that I was being prescribed, which was such a feeling of release and relief.
Wow. Yeah, you'd done that yourself. And how
Yeah.
many months into starting? Had you started in the January? You said it
Yes,
was very cold.
so it started in the
Just a few
January, and by
months.
the end of April, I was off all of those tablets. And if I look back, maybe I did go a little overboard, particularly on the weight loss side of things.
Yeah.
But I never felt like I was overly constrained or restricted. I never felt like I was excessively working out.
Mm.
I felt really good. And because I felt really good, I really enjoyed doing it. And people tend to do things that they enjoy.
And I mean, at what stage in were you asked to go onto the cover of Men's Fitness? How did that come around?
well, well, that was quite a while later. So the first step to that was I decided I was going to help other people my kind of age
Hmm.
lose weight, improve their fitness, improve their health. And there's some pictures of Ralph Fiennes, the actor, hit the media, and he had gone from being a podgy priest in Conclave to this battle-hardened warrior in the film The Return, I think, if I remember rightly. Now, Ralph Fiennes is 62, and so to
Hmm.
make those kind of changes
Yeah.
really does defy the incorrect logic of it's too late once you're over 40,
Yes.
50 or 60. And so I wrote to Men's Fitness and said, this is a really great example of what can be achieved. Would you be interested in doing a story
Hmm.
about getting fit over the age of 50? The editor got back to me eventually. And towards the end of the conversation, he said, and I'll put you on the front cover.
Well.
I almost dropped the phone, you know.
Yeah.
And so I put the article together. I continued talking with David, the editor, and we got some photos, and that I ended up appearing on the cover in September.
And what was the reaction from, again, friends and family who saw it?
So people were genuinely pleased for me. So my closest family, is just gushing with, this is so good, you deserve it. But by this
Mm.
point, I was 6 years and more from my own transformation, coaching and helping a lot of people, building a business on this as well. So I gave up my consulting activities and focused all on training and coaching people. It was interesting though, because people that I hadn't heard from for a long while started getting in touch with me on Facebook, or I still existed in their address book somehow, and just messages saying it's great to see what you've done,
Yeah.
amazing, etc., etc. Some would say, "Can you help me?"
Yeah.
and
I'd
and
quite like to look like that myself.
and so I guess in a way it was like a reward for everything that I'd done for me, for my
Mm.
family, for those that are around me, and as I started coaching people for my clients as well. So
Yeah. And I mean, what is your basic regimen? I love how you talk about working smarter, not harder. I nearly got that wrong. I was about to go into the working harder, not smarter.
that's what we do in
Yeah,
our
you
younger
talk.
years.
What is working out smarter, but not harder?
It's about balance primarily, and it's also about recognizing what is effective and what isn't. So my regime has always been based on a hybrid approach, which is a
Mm.
mixture of strength, cardiovascular activity, and mobility activity. So, as an example, every morning I'll do a 10-minute yoga type of stretch routine.
Mhm.
I will either do cardiovascular activity, and I still love running. I still feel like Bilbo Baggins when I'm out running in the countryside, or strength work. So, and that combination is the start point. So being completely biased on one side and not the other isn't going to get the same kind of results and give you true health and fitness in the same way as focusing on all three. It might mean that you're not the strongest bloke in the gym, but it will mean that you are in the top 5%. But unlike the strongest bloke in the gym, you can run 5 miles quite easily and
Yeah.
have those benefits.
And it's
Um,
about life quality as well,
exactly,
about having some kind of balance, and giving ourselves the best shot at healthy lifespan.
totally.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, from the health benefits and the longevity benefits, Unsurprisingly, things like running, walking even, which I say is the most underrated exercise out there, cycling or whatever it might be, that is strengthening your heart, your lungs, and it's improving your immune system against particularly, cold and flu-based viruses. If you think about strength, as we age, we do lose our muscle strength and our muscle mass. You are actively fighting against that, which means that in years to come, you will be able to get up out of a chair or off the toilet without aid and without assistance. You will maintain your independence for longer. And when you think about mobility, getting in and out of a car, for example, as you age, can be pretty difficult for people because your joints are not as supple as they used to be. It aids with that functionality that isn't just about getting in and out of a car, but all kinds of actions that we undertake in day-to-day life and currently take for granted.
I don't know if you're aware, Jason, but my mum and dad have become internet stars because
Brilliant.
they started strength training in their 80s. So just
Excellent.
at the start of last year. And I won't dwell on it because a lot of my regular viewers and listeners will be acutely aware of this. But my mum in particular, my dad has built extraordinary strength in a year. He was pretty fit and active before. He was slowing down a little at 81, but he's really rebuilt that. My mum has had a real transformation in terms of her mobility. She could barely hold her back up before, and she's just increasing all the time the amount of distance that she is able to cover and the speed she's able to cover it while holding her back up through strength training. So, I mean, my message to everybody is it's really not too late. And I was keen to share their story and their progress on YouTube as a kind of show don't tell,
Yes. Yes.
if they can do it, you can when you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s. I mean, you take quite a hard line with people in the sense that you feel really we owe it to our children, to the generations behind us. Once we become aware of the changes that are possible, we really should make them. I mean, how do you see that for people who are aging and losing their mobility and their strength as they age?
Well, I guess it's mostly based on my own experience and the changes that I've applied to myself, but also what I've seen in homes and hospitals with having elderly parents, elderly relatives. What I did see was that you had a lot of people who had ended up in a position of a loss of independence, or a loss of independence, and become dependent on somebody else. And just seeing the effect that had on other family members, and the upset, the emotional burden that can carry, really struck me. And so, I am very, very strong of you might think you're okay now. You might be in your 50s or your 60s and think that you're okay now. But these things do deteriorate quickly. And the older you get, the quicker they deteriorate. Think about it. Think about how you want to be for your kids. So, you may not have grandkids yet, but at some point you may. And I'm sure from your own perspective, you would like to be capable of spending time with them and having fun with them and playing with them and getting on the floor with them and building things out of blocks or putting Lego together or whatever it might be, and just being an active part of their lives. But there's also the burden of, once you do get to a point where you lose your independence and you do become dependent on somebody else, you either have a financial burden through having to pay for the provision of care, or a time burden with other people providing that care for you on your behalf. And when I think of myself, I don't want to impact my son's life in that way. I want to be independent and active and as big a part of his life for as long as I possibly can be, in a positive way. rather than making demands as a result of my condition on his time and attention, when really he should be focused on his family, his job, his career, his life, um, and progressing himself.
And of course, there's two sides to it, really. It's lack of awareness often that things can be turned around later in life.
Yes.
That was certainly the case for my own parents. I mean, I think most people probably would hate the idea of feeling like they were a burden. And, there's lots of situations where it's just not that person's fault.
Yes.
And I think we have generations who have no idea that you could rebuild muscle. And that's a big problem. And it's not necessarily on them. It's more about the kind of public information, public health information that really hasn't carried that messaging. I can say that as somebody who was exploring how to age well for years until the penny dropped that, seems to be that muscle plays quite a big part in that. And then, of course, you're like, of course.
Yes.
Why? Of course, when you build muscle, everything is going to get better in your life. And then there's also that how on earth would I get started in later life? A lot of people say to me, I just don't have the money for a trainer. I can't join a gym. What would your advice be to people in those situations? I've got a lot of people as well who say, I wish I could encourage my parents to do what your parents are doing, but we don't have the equipment. What's your advice for people on how they can get started at home?
Well, the first thing is to start easy, because you need to develop a base level of particularly with strength training, a base level of strength to keep you developing. And you don't need any equipment. You don't need me or anybody else as a trainer. A lot of us intuitively know what we can do. And it's as simple as, maybe put in 4 or 5 exercises together that you do each day. So something like, and this is all body weight, squats. So just, just doing some squats, particularly important in terms of our future mobility and being able to get up from chairs. And if you don't feel like you can squat, then get a chair, sit on it and stand up, and then repeat. You just keep doing that action, and then eventually you'll be able to perform that action without actually sitting on the chair. And some of these things you can do as part of your normal life. So if you are walking across the kitchen to go and get something, instead of stepping normally, actually lunge your way to the cupboard, the fridge, whatever it might be. And that will give your glutes and your quads, again, a really good strength exercise, and develop your mobility again, because each time you do these things, you'll be able to get a little bit lower and extend your range of movement. For the upper body, you can do things like press-ups. Now, some people will think, I couldn't do a press-up. Some people might think, I could easily do 10 press-ups, and then find out that they can't.
Yeah, take care on that one.
Exactly. But you don't have to do a press-up, in the traditional position on the floor. You can even start off by just pressing against the wall. Angle yourself slightly and then just pressing against the wall. And then over time, instead of pressing against the wall, use the back of the sofa. Instead, put your hands on the back of the sofa. You're at a lower angle, which means that you're working against more resistance. And that will work your shoulders, your chest, and your triceps. In terms of pull type of exercises, if you have bottles of milk in the fridge, you can get a couple of bottles of, preferably full ones rather than empty, out of the fridge, grab hold the handles and perform bicep curls, or lean over the counter and pull back so that you're in effect doing a soaring or rowing type of action. All of these things are totally accessible to anybody and will be effective. They will get you started. They will start generating that feeling of strength, which will generate a feel good, which should then motivate you to keep developing. And if that means that you want to buy a set of dumbbells or something like that, they're not expensive. You can get a good set of dumbbells, a reasonable price, delivered to you home, and progress that way.
Yeah, because the key is progression. Just for people who maybe haven't heard this before, it is about adding to that load gradually over time so that you are challenged by those weights.
Absolutely. But it doesn't always mean that you have to increase the weight. So as an example with press ups, I started with incline press ups, and then I was doing press ups on the floor. Now I do as part of my yoga routine each morning, I do a 1 minute push up. So you spend 30 seconds going down, and then you spend 30 seconds coming back up again. And the control and strength that you need to be able to do that is, the equivalent of probably bench pressing 80 kilos, something like that. So you can do a lot of things just by altering the tempo of the movement, the range of your movement, and then also, as you say, increasing the amount of resistance that you're working with through an increased weight.
Yeah, fantastic. Where do people best find you on social media, through your website and so on? Where can they find you to get more tips?
Okay, well, it's all under my brand, which is Fit in Midlife, all one word. That's on Instagram, it's on TikTok, it's on Facebook and Threads and all of the others. And my website is, unsurprisingly, fitinmidlife.com. So that's where I am.
That keeps it super easy, and we will link those below for people as well. But I so appreciate your time and sharing your story with us, and the results you have achieved are tremendous.
Thank you, Claire. I really appreciated it and really enjoyed it, more importantly.
Me too. My thanks to Jason there for sharing his inspirational transformation with us. And we'll link to his details below, where you'll also find a link to sign up to my free newsletter, and you can get my episodes and articles delivered straight to your inbox so you don't miss a thing. And if you'd like to see behind the scenes content and vlogs from me, you'll also find a link below to join the channel as a member. But for now, thanks for being here today.